Wow, what a great story.
Wow, what a great half hour this has been. Tune in next time for more great God Thing stories, and tell all your friends to tune in too. Oh yeah, one more thing. If you or someone you know has a verifiable story which needs to be told, please email a brief summary to us, mystory@itsagodthingradio.com. That's my story, all one word, @itsagodthingradio.com. See you next time.
Our God is a mountain mover, and He's still moving mountains every day. And the good news is, He can move your mountains too. Hi there, this is Sue Cooper. Welcome to It's a God Thing radio program. Thanks for joining us today. You're about to hear some awesome interviews with believers in Jesus Christ who will tell you how God has revealed and proved Himself to them by moving mountains they were unable to move by themselves. They say that their stories can only be described as a God thing. Ready for a blessing? Let's roll. Here's our host, Chuck Cooper, with a great God Thing story.
Well, all of us are facing very difficult economic times in our country, and many of us are facing some really, really bad and serious financial challenges. That's the case with our two guests today. And first we'd like to talk with Angie Gossage from Marietta, Georgia, who has a really neat story to tell about how God orchestrated to help them out with their finances. So, Angie, welcome to our program, and tell us about your story.
Well, about a year ago, my husband and I took a Dave Ramsey course at our church and decided that we would make the commitment to start tithing. And so we did for a few months, and everything was going okay, and then things would come up, bills would come up, different things that would prevent us from tithing. And so we stopped tithing for several months. And then the Lord was really dealing with me on the importance of tithing and on being obedient to Him. So
now, how was He dealing with you?
He in my quiet time, He was talking to me, and when I kept getting brought back to Malachi, the book of Malachi in the 4th chapter, and where He says to test Him in this and see if He won't open the floodgates of blessing. And so every time I would turn on the radio, I would hear a preacher talking about tithing. They were talking about it at our church, and I just knew that that's what we were supposed to be doing. So I talked to Tommy, and he agreed. And just as we were about to make the decision to start tithing again, we found out that he was possibly going to be laid off from work.
Oh, boy.
So in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, now's not really the time, because we really should be saving just in case he gets laid off, because we'd been there before. And it was really a scary time, and I thought, surely you don't mean right now, God. So but we decided to stand firm with our commitment, and Tommy did get the notice that he was going to be laid off. And we started tithing in May, and towards the end of June, Tommy got offered a job within the same company, and it was actually a promotion, and it was the exact hours that he wanted, and a position that he thought would challenge him. So it was actually better than the job that he had before. So that was the first blessing.
Well, and you feel that his getting that job was a result of the fact that you were trying to be obedient and to begin tithing again?
Absolutely, because it was a sacrifice to tithe. It was scary to tithe, to let go of that money, when we were thinking, how are we going to put food on the table for our children, and what if he does lose his job, and worst case scenario. So it was very scary to tithe, but we felt very strongly that we needed to anyway.
Okay.
So, but that wasn't the only blessing, because
there's more.
There's a lot more, because at the end of July, we got a letter in the mail from a lawyer saying that we had unclaimed money in the state of Florida, and that kind of thing doesn't happen very often. So we kind of thought it was a joke at first, and then we investigated and found out that my name really was on the unclaimed list in the state of Florida for money. So I filled out all the necessary paperwork and had no idea if it was really mine or not. And a couple months later, we received a check in the mail for $7,500. And
my goodness.
And we think it was from a stock that possibly that my granddad had bought me when I was a teenager living in the state of Florida, but we're not sure. But I know where it came from.
Okay, where did it come from?
It came straight from God as a blessing for being obedient.
My goodness me. So let me get this clear. You went to a Dave Ramsey program and made a commitment to tithe. You tithed for a little bit, and then you backed off a little bit from your tithe. Then your husband gets a notice that he's probably going to be laid off. And so now then you're concerned about whether or not you ought to tithe, but every time you turned on a radio or heard a sermon, they were talking about being obedient by tithing. The next thing you did, you went to your husband, you agreed you'd go ahead and tithe again, do a full tithe again. And shortly after that, he got a job offer, which was actually a promotion. And then shortly after that, you get this letter from an attorney in Florida saying that the state owed you money.
That's right.
My goodness me. Well, Angie, that's quite a story, and that's going to be an encouragement. Now, obviously, you can't promise everybody or anybody who's listening that if they start tithing, they're going to get a check, a surprise check for $7,500. But certainly the message is there that we do need to be obedient, particularly in these stressful financial times. So thank you so much for sharing, and I need to have one more question for you. Would you say that how the Lord has orchestrated your finances since you made a commitment to tithe has been a God thing?
Oh, most definitely.
Thanks, Angie. Wow, what a great story. I don't know about you, but we here at It's a God Thing Radio are inspired and encouraged and even awed when we hear stories like the one you're hearing today. We think God Thing stories prove to all who hear them how God continues to work every day in the lives of His believers. We also believe strongly that sharing God Thing stories with not yet believers might just cause them to remember similar events in their own lives. Hopefully, those remembrances will cause them to consider that there may be something to God and Jesus after all. Sharing your own God Thing story, yes, your own story, is a great way to witness to your family, friends, co-workers, schoolmates, and even strangers. Who won't listen when you begin a conversation by saying, "My goodness, you won't believe what happened to me a while back," or, "Gosh, I'm so excited about what happened to a couple at our church. Let me tell you about it." Then tell your own story or share one you've heard here. Doing so just might cause someone to accept Jesus as Savior and Lord.
Now let's get back to today's program.
Well, we have another guest today who is going to testify and let you know how God blessed her when she made the decision to tithe. So we'd like to welcome to our program today Catherine Anliker from Fayetteville, Georgia. And Catherine, tell us how and why you made this decision to tithe and what happened.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. And the reason why I began tithing was because back about a year ago, I was encouraged by my parents actually to take the financial peace class through the church that they attend. And at first I was kind of hesitant because, I didn't really care necessarily about financial, planning and that kind of thing. I mean, I was, of course, interested in money because I needed it, and I never seemed to have it, but I wasn't really interested in learning about it necessarily, but they encouraged me to take it, and so I, okay, I will. And so when I, first started taking the class, I thought, oh, this is pretty good. Yeah, I'm kind of learning a lot about this, and so the more I got into the class, the more I just became aware of what was happening financially in my life and in the country and in, the world, and how all of that was really going to affect me and my future. And of course, one of the main things that they talk about in the class is tithing. And I have a small business, and you can imagine that small businesses are having hard times these days, and mine was no exception. And so, I always was kind of the Scarlett O'Hara type of thing, where it's like, oh, I'll think about that tomorrow. I'll think about my finances tomorrow. Or, I want to buy this dress today, but I'll think about how I'm going to pay for it tomorrow. And so anyway, I just decided, I got to think about this today.
Sure.
So I made a commitment to begin tithing, and I wasn't really sure. At the time, I wasn't a member of a particular church. I was visiting around to different ones, and wasn't sure exactly how I would do that. But I did make the commitment to tithe, and I kind of just felt like I would let the Holy Spirit guide me as to where where I would tithe.
Sure.
So I did, and began doing that. And it was funny because, my salary was very, very, very small. But I started seeing that, I'd go to the doctor and they'd say, oh, you have a $20 credit. You don't have to pay your copay this time. You've got a credit. And then, I went to a class about how to use coupons and learned all sorts of ways that you can save money with coupons.
Dave Ramsey got to you, didn't he?
I know. And there's all these, couponing is such a huge, fad or whatever these days. Of course, everyone needs it, I think, so that's why it's so popular. But I just, I signed up for, emails, programs where they would send you, $10 off here or whatever. And it was just, more and more I saw that, it's not the United States economy or the world economy, it's God's economy. God is the one that conducts all this business. And it's not up to, the stock market or anything. All these people are affecting it in some ways, but God is in control of it. And so just becoming aware of how things were working out helped me understand that God is in charge. So, and as I was doing this with my personal finances, I began thinking, well, God's blessing me with this, and I'm benefiting from being obedient to Him through my personal finances. I think I should start doing it through my business, and I don't have exact figures as far as percentages and stuff, but the difference between my sales in 2009 versus 2010, which is when I started tithing through the business, it's just, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily doubled, but I would say it's up at least 30 to 40% from last year.
Has the bulk of that come since you made the commitment to tithe your business?
Yes.
My goodness, Catherine.
It really has. And again, through the business, I didn't have a specific church, but I would just be really led by the Holy Spirit to say, okay, I heard about this ministry, or I heard about, this family that's really struggling, and so this is where I want to, this is where I want to send the tithe money this month. And an interesting story happened one time. I think the Holy Spirit speaks to me a lot through my driving, like when I'm driving in the car. That's when I hear all these things. So
he's a protector too.
I know. Thank goodness. Yeah. So I had heard about this family that was, struggling in a particular area with their finances, and it's not a family that I know all that much, but I know about them, and I know some things about them, and some decisions that they've made were not really ones that I would have made.
Sure.
And just sort of the ways that they've treated other people are not ways that I would have treated people. But I had heard about how they were struggling in a certain area. They wanted to send their children to a camp, a Christian camp, and a member of their extended family is a minister. And I thought, and an out-of-work minister, and I thought, well, he's out of work. They should be having camp 24/7. Why do they need money to send their kids to camp? And so as I was thinking more about this, I just kind of felt convicted, and I thought, I'm being judgmental of that whole situation, and so I'm going to send them some money for camp. And back and forth in my mind, I thought, no, I'm not going to send them my money. I don't want to send them my money. And finally, the Holy Spirit said, hey, wait a minute, it's not your money.
That's right.
So I actually did And of course, they don't know that I sent it to them, and I don't want them to know.
Sure.
So hopefully they're not going to listen to this this particular topic on your show. But it's just the awareness of it's not my money; it's God's money. So.
Well, you had another interesting result. The rest of the story is you, as you indicated, your business had been struggling some, and you got some help, some part-time help. And as a former business owner myself, I know you pay the help first, and you can,
right.
if there's anything left, you get to use it or have it. And then a lot of times you're trying to use that money to expand your business and to grow. So money can be tight for a small business business owner. So, but you have the Lord has provided another source of income for you, has He not?
He has, yes.
Okay,
he has.
Well, tell us about that and how that happened.
Okay, well, for actually several years, I've realized that this business it's doing okay, but this is not going to sustain me for the rest of my life. So I need to kind of, look for some different options and stuff. So, I would send resumes here and I would do it there. And actually, I started going back to school to get further education and, trying to prepare for the future and stuff. Well, rejection after rejection after rejection. And, it's very discouraging, of course. And I'm not the only person, of course, that's being turned down for jobs and stuff. But there was an opportunity that came up with a friend of mine, and she asked me to give her a resume. And so I did. And, it was one of those things that it seemed like, wow, this is the perfect job. I really felt like I was qualified for it. I really felt like, this could really be it. And so I actually revised my resume and, redesigned it and stuff. And I'm very close with my parents, and so I asked them to help me by laying all of our hands on the resume and just praying for it, So I specifically, and we were intentional about this, I said, okay, I want everybody to sit on the couch, and I'm going to sit in the middle, and I want, Mom to sit on one side, Dad to sit on the other side, and I just want us all to physically lay our hands on this resume and pray over it. And so we did, and I believe my dad is the one that said, God, please just get this resume to the right person, put it in the right hands and bless it. And so anyway, so I gave my resume to the friend, and she took it to her boss and her person that was in charge of hiring for this job. And so I thought, okay, this is it. And didn't even get an interview for that job.
Oh my goodness!
Before the HR department called and said, well, we've decided to go in a different direction with another candidate. And so I was actually shopping at the time when I got that phone call. So everything in my basket got put back on the shelves. And, of course I was very upset and very, discouraged, because I thought, wow, God, I prayed about that and I asked you to bless it and you didn't. And I was just really kind of angry, actually.
Sure.
And so then a couple months later, I heard about another, my friend that I had given the resume to had another contact in her same corporation, and her friend had been doing a kind of a little session about what her department did. It's the IT department in their company had come to do a presentation about what the IT department was doing in this organization, and some things that they were working on and projects and stuff. And one of the things that they talked about was some IT training. And so as my friend Bonnie was thinking about this and what they were doing, she thought, wow, Catherine would really be good for that. That might be something that she might be interested in. She might be a fit for that.
Now, how long after you got the rejection did this occur?
About 2 months.
About 2 months, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean,
relatively soon.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I didn't really know anything about it. All this was kind of going on behind the scenes, and I was sort of unaware, because my friend Bonnie had kind of decided, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to take it in my own hands, and if it works out, then sure, Catherine will be grateful and all this. But, she knew that I was disappointed, and she thought, well, if it doesn't work out, then we just won't.
Yeah, we won't say anything.
Yeah, spare the details. So I said, I was just kind of going along thinking, well, I'm trusting God and everything. Well, my friend's friend looked at the resume, and she said to Bonnie, she said, wow, this really looks like she might be a good fit for what we're doing. And, I think this might work out. And long story short, I got a phone call and a phone interview and went in for a couple interviews. And I start in about 2 weeks with not the original job in IT training, but it's actually a part-time job with doing some training, coordinating the different training events.
Catherine, you're relatively young. What advice would you have to folks in their 20s and 30s that are out on their own and that they're struggling during these economic times? So what would you suggest that they do?
Well, I think that you have to realize that God is in control, and like I said before, it is God's economy. Mm-hmm. Don't get wrapped up in the bad news and the bad stories that you hear about oh, well, these are just trying times, and all that. They are, of course, but realize that there's hope. We have a bigger economist in God, and so we've got to honor Him first. So definitely think about that in terms of tithing. I think that there's things that you can look around and you can see like ways to save and ask for God's wisdom and ask for God's help. I'm sure I know He's willing to give it to us if we just ask Him. A couple times recently, I've asked for things that I didn't feel like I would deserve or get, but I did get them and did receive them, and so God's willing to give it to you if you just ask for Him. I mean, it may be in a different way, or
you have to have a good relationship with Him to start with.
Well, sure,
and you have to be obedient to what He's asking and prompting you to do, like when you're driving and listening to the Holy Spirit telling you to tithe.
Okay. Actually do it. Right.
Right.
Well, an interesting thing too that happened while I was driving was for about a week or so, I wasn't 100% sure what the salary was going to be for what I was going to be doing with Chick-fil-A, and so I had some figures in mind, but I just didn't know for sure. It was kind of a negotiation thing.
Right.
And as I was going along, I hadn't thought about the story of the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. I hadn't thought about that for years. I mean, it's a story that everybody hopefully knows. But all of a sudden, that story just came to mind. I was just driving along, and I thought, oh, well, God blessed the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. It doesn't matter how much it is. The actual figure doesn't matter.
Right.
What matters is that God's going to bless it.
Yes.
And so I thought, wow, I really want to read that story and see what it says again. To see what happens in it. And so I read it, and I came up with several things that I just sort of wrote down. And if you don't mind, I'll just briefly list them out.
Sure.
The first thing is that God told the disciples to get everybody, the 5,000 people that were there that day. He asked them to get them in groups of 50s. And so from that I thought, okay, well that, from what I understand, that means is like, okay, you got to get organized with your budget and your plan, and you got to say, okay, well this is what I'm going to do, and plan it all out. And then so the disciples did that, and so actually you got to work your plan. You can't just have a plan, you got to work it. And so then the next thing that happens in the story is God looks to heaven, and He asks His Father to bless, or Jesus, looks to heaven and asks God to bless what they had been given, which is their 5 loaves and 2 fish. And so you got to give thanks, and you've got to, it says He broke the bread, so you've got to again, break down what you've got and sort of divide it out into your budget and stuff. If you can use what you've got, you got to do that.
Sure.
And be practical about things, and don't just assume that, this isn't going to work. We've got to,
It's interesting in that story, Catherine, I was just reminded of it. I heard a preacher say it somewhere, but they did not take up an offering to go buy food.
Right, exactly.
That's sort of unusual in a church setting.
That is unusual, yeah, exactly. Just make what you've got work, make it do its job.
Boy, Catherine, thank you so much for visiting with us today and sharing this pretty personal story with us, but you're going to be an encouragement. What you've said and your story is going to be an encouragement. And boy, I tell you what, girl, the Lord is really blessing you well.
He is. I'm very thankful.
Would you say then, one final question, would you say then, Catherine, that all that's happened since you made the decision to tithe was a God thing?
Oh, absolutely, it's a God thing, and I'm very thankful to Him and all the people that have He's used to encourage me.
Well, I want to also reveal, Catherine, that you are my niece.
Yes.
And she indicated that while she was considering the tithe and where to give it, that Catherine made a substantial contribution to It's a God Thing ministry. And we're very grateful for that, Catherine.
Well, thank you and
much.
thank God.
Amen.
Yeah.
My God is a mountain mover. My God's gonna make a way. Can't count all the times He's moved.
Wow, what a great half hour this has been. Tune in next time for more great God Thing stories, and tell all your friends to tune in too. Oh yeah, one more thing. If you or someone you know has a verifiable story which needs to be told, please email a brief summary to us at mystory@itsagodthingradio.com. That's my story, all one word, at itsagodthingradio.com. See you next time.